Ah, planes. Not quite cars, still somehow Disney. This was a quick 2-beat franchise on top of the already 3 Cars movies, the cancelled Trains movie, and a million different spin-offs, shorts, and miniseries that had Owen Wilson running around as that red race car. But the qualities of the 2 Planes movies couldn't be further apart. So here is a surprise turnaround from a small pocket of the universe of one of Pixar's classics. Here are our 2 full breakdowns of Disney's Planes and Disney's Planes Fire and Rescue, and with sponsorships all cut out. Wait, Planes actually exists? I always thought it was a stupid internet myth of a Cars sequel that never actually happened. Pixar never made an official Planes movie, so excuse me for not making this video a year sooner. I literally scrapped this as a video prompt back then because I didn't realize it was real. Turns out, it's official and done by Disney. But not Pixar, no, instead it's via Disney Toon Studios. Who's this? Another studio I have to keep track of now? Oh, that's pretty simple. They're the go-to for most dodgy sequels to all the major Disney movies. Return of Jafar, Brother Bear 2, Pocahontas 2, Lion King 2, basically all the 2s. Though they also made the gold mine that is a Goofy movie, and Stitch has a glitch? Man, I need to get more in the know. But beyond doing every Disney sequel to varying success, they once did a Pixar spin-off. My apologies to those that suggested this. Futaba Forever, Verminator, Spider-Bat, and Nair. That one's from 2 years ago. This is presumably the Terrible Planes movie.
Yep, this is definitely unofficial.
Even for 2013, isn't it a little late for just outright rock music in your face? Anyway, we've got these 2 official fighter jets doing their runs at training, talking about our super protagonist.
Is he really as good as they say he is? No.
Oh.
Better.
And here he is, just a dinky little flyplane, able to outspeed even fighter jet, flaring around them and all. Oh, never mind, it was just his imagination. Your classic power fantasy. Hey, wait a minute. Is the base shaped like an airplane? So in the Cars universe, terraforming is different around the globes depending on the population around it? First car mountains and now plane landscapes? Huh.
I am more than just a crop duster.
So while Cars was all about a city racer having to learn the rural ways, this is about a rural crop duster plane hoping to one day be a racer, with all the standard beats that come with it.
I mean, why would you want to give up crop dusting? Blue skies, no air traffic,
as well as some off choices for humor.
and that tangy scent of Vita Mini Mulch. Just like Mama used to spray.
Oh boy, this definitely ain't no Pixar script. Though what is the tying thread for this movie is one member of the team who co-wrote and executive produced this movie, everyone's favorite Pixar stain and chief creative officer at the time, John Lasseter. Oh, great. But now we know. So moving on, we now get to meet an actual car in our Planes movie. Hey, shouldn't that be illegal? His name's Chug, the fuel tank truck. He has some opinions about types of fuel, thinking the new stuff is stupid, how environmentally aware, but our protagonist spreads pesticides, so maybe that's not a surprise. But he likes corn fuel the best.
Corn. It gives you gas.
Yeah, eat your heart out, schmo yo-ho. But moving on from our second fart joke in under 3 minutes, Chug's secondary passion is in crewmating for plane racing, readying up to train Dusty Crop Hopper for the races.
You mean aileron?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great.
I'll get him next time. It's not a gunshot as much as it fully looks like it.
You've worn out your main oil seal.
Oh, that makes sense. And so it's an introductory scene to our engineer Dottie, who can immediately spot Dusty's attempts at pushing his body to race.
Dusty, you're not built to race. You're built to dust crops.
Man, is this gonna be another movie with the underbelly message kind of being about disabilities? Because it's kind of tragic sounding to be born into the wrong body in the Planes universe, you know? Don't count on it. As Dottie continues to kick Dusty down on even thinking about it.
Turbine failure.
Turbine
Oh
failure?
no, I'm going down. Oh my gosh,
What?
the orphanage.
Oof. Dottie's a little full on, but it doesn't deter the boys who are ecstatic for the Wings Around the World races while just watching the top 10 crashes on TV.
Whoa,
Not good.
How does that happen?
In the logic of the Planes world, isn't this essentially like watching Live Leak? Like, they are practically watching footage of their own people dying, especially if it's the best of all time.
Oh, man.
I'm okay. Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
Jesus Christ, this world is brutal. But with with Chug getting nervous, we come to ask a veteran plane for help, Skipper.
I heard you shot down 50 planes.
You looking to be number 51?
Oof. You know, this character is one big Easter egg. Turns out we've seen him before in Cars Toons, another spin-off miniseries to Cars. Specifically, Air Mater, where Mater talks about how he learned how to fly through this Skipper dude.
I'm Skipper.
Can you learn me how to fly?
But, you're a tow truck.
He's suddenly a lot friendlier in the Cars universe. Anyway, after failing to convince him, Dusty gets the door slammed in his face. But how did he shut the door? Now we're here at the qualifiers.
I don't know how you talked me into coming to this.
Yeah, I don't either. You make no sense being here. It's a simple obstacle course. Fly between the pylons normally or vertically. Everyone else has had their go, with one having a character trait.
Man, that's nasty.
And at the end, it's Dusty's turn.
Now you know you built for speed, not speed.
Nice of you to take the day off, just to lose.
How do you think it's gonna go when everyone is literally built to be as aerodynamic as possible against Dusty's crop design here?
Oh yes, what a finish. Now that's what you call flying.
Way to go, Dustmeister!
He was 10 milliseconds slower than the guy we saw near the beginning. The proper professional. Milliseconds. I mean, go off, achieve your dreams, but I guess forget physics along the way. That being said, this whole racing sequence is actually really good and dynamic. The soundtrack in the background is properly putting some work in to make you feel motivated for planes, and the voice acting is stellar throughout. Not to mention the cinematography splits into panels from multiple angles on the main event. It's actually really surprisingly good. There's a little bit of that Cars secret formula in there somewhere, but Dusty places 6th. It's just not enough, and so he mopes.
Oh shit, there's a plane heading for our house!
Seriously, why does this look like a sad scene from Interstellar or something? But of course, the plot can't actually stick around as just this, though maybe I'd want to see a slice of life in a fantasy land one day. As this forklift arrives with some news.
Strut Jetstream?
Nope, doesn't ring a bell.
Movies like this always like to waste your time, don't they? It's always the same joke with varying degrees of actually successful comedy. But you can't miss every time.
Actually pronounced Dusty Crophopper.
This guy and his staring is probably a highlight so far. I mean, they use it again to make another damn compost joke, but
Oh, yeah, smell that? It's like daffodils and...
I'm willing to allow it. Anyway, Dusty's qualified since our main guy was apparently blood doping, but with fuel. And just like that, this guy disappears, and the whole town of unestablished characters cheers Dusty on. And to add on to that, Skipper makes his reappearance, telling him to quit.
You'll end up a smoking hole on the side of a mountain with your parts spread over 5 countries.
I mean, Christ, this is some disgustingly graphic imagery we're going with here. I just can't fathom how much of a leap we've gotten just because we're suddenly in the air now. Why do I want a mature Cars movie?
I've flown thousands of miles, and I've never been anywhere.
Wow, that's a proper motivation for the old crop duster. But I mean, you could just travel. Is there a cost of living crisis in the Planes universe? Did they pay for petrol? But it's enough for Skipper.
You were built to fight, and look what you did.
Wait, so does that mean there were Nazi planes in the past? Training time! It's all good doing the normal hops over trees and grazing grass, but here's the life bro tip that'll disregard the advantages of a super plane built for racing.
Then look up. See those clouds? The highway in the sky. Tailwinds like nothing you've ever flown.
Okay, I guess I can get behind that then, instead of being the broken record about how aerodynamic it isn't for a crop duster's plane's body to compete successfully in a race. Except...
No! He's off the pitch! Go down!
he's a plane, and he's scared of heights. Oh, Jesus Chrysler.
During the attack of Tahunga Harbor, why even the P-38s had trouble at high altitudes.
I'm sorry. Are we directly going there? I know there's already enough commentary about the tiny bird planes in France, or the car Pope confirming that car Jesus was crucified, but the attack on Tahunga Harbor? P-38s? I looked into it. Tahunga isn't real, but P-38s were involved around Pearl Harbor. My god, they're just mentioning it outright at this point. So while you'd imagine Mr. Veteran over here would quickly be about turning back to his shelter, telling Dusty to just quit, turns out they're just gonna do low altitude training instead. First, racing the shadow of another plane and failing immediately.
We can increase power, or we can decrease drag.
Alright, so now they're actively changing somewhat the anatomy of the old crop duster. Okay, this is sounding more plausible. Never considered the spray line thing to be a plane's ghoulies, but apparently they are. Someone write that down. After a mini montage of learning techniques and a few engine operations, we're starting to make some progress.
Altitude for airspeed. Gravity is your ally. The laws of physics govern speed. Use your radial G. Let gravity work for you.
Don't forget to tighten those lamp busters and never bring a cat to a dogfight.
And with the end of our montage, we've had a success.
He's ready.
And so, Dusty makes his way over to New York, with only a minor bump along the way.
Get off the runway!
Before, of course, being a fish out of water. Everyone bumping about everywhere.
The pits? Oh, yeah, that's easy. Do you want to go down this way toward the...
It's him.
And so, Dusty joins up with all the rest of the planes from around the world.
Look, I don't know how things work in the backwater from which you hail, matey, but this is
Oh, it's him. And probably not too far off from his actual opinions of Americans IRL.
And it's because these people are operating at a very, very low level of mental health.
We get a couple more introductions. Here's an obvious romantic interest.
Look at that propeller.
Or maybe other type of interest. Here's Ripslinger from earlier, being about as you'd expect. And then this guy.
You have never heard of the great El Chupacabra?
Known for indoor racing and clearly the only chance Dusty has for a friend.
The scene below me is absolutely electric.
Oof. Look at Blimp Guy over here. Dude's looking more like a Coco Melon character than a Cars character. I mean, I get how it's the same visual engine behind it all, but boy, it does not translate all that well onto a blimp. And so we're at the start of a very long race, about an hour according to the runtime.
Don't let anything distract you.
What is she flapping anatomically? One more plane to add to our collection, Rochelle, the Canadian rally champion. Got all that? British John Cleese, douchey Ripslinger, Ishani from India, Chupacabra, he's hard to miss, and of course Dusty. Let the races begin.
And we are underway.
And as we've well established from Dusty's fear of heights, he's gonna lowball it the whole time. Boy, it sure is boring to watch this race take place in real time, huh? But eventually, Dusty makes it through the icy skies of Iceland, where everyone else has been warming up for a while. There was no serious strategy from Dusty for this whole first 3,000-kilometer leg. This guy just went through all that training, learning all about his G radials, and then just had the gall to fly straight and low all day. I mean, it's hilarious how stupid he is. My vote's on Chupacabra, doofy and actually functional.
Why don't you go plow yourself, El Chutoy?
Maybe a little too functional. This movie is seriously playing both cards right now. All in on the fart jokes for kids, and a little uncomfortably comfortable with the sexual hints for adults. And so, through a radio back home, Dusty is told he needs to fly a little higher to avoid growing ice, and it's all about agility through this next obstacle course.
It's not speed that wins races, it's skill.
Shame you've got your eggs in the basket of Mr. Flying Straight and nothing else, Skipper. And here we are, it's those pylons again. How's Dusty gonna do? I don't know, we barely see him today. It's all about John Cleese.
Mayday! Mayday!
And just like that, the old British bulldog is dead. Except remember that part at the very end of Cars 1 where Lightning finally has a revelation and chooses to come last so that he can save another member of the race? Well, apparently Dusty has already seen this film as he does exactly that. When no one else came by Cleese's side as he plummeted blind, Dusty swoops down to follow and guide him forwards to a safe landing.
Bulldog, apply your left aileron. Side roll right. Good.
And it all works. You know, funnily enough, the point of planes was to try to avoid just doing another Cars. Kind of tough considering this didn't need to be a racing movie. It could have been something else planes related, you know? Apparently there was even conscious efforts that when ideas were pitched that were a little too close to the sun, they were rejected. But racing still got in there. And so did the final story beat. Interesting.
Thanks for your help, matey. I couldn't have done it without you.
Did the writers at Disney Toon Studio think British spoke like pirates? We don't really say matey, but Bulldog does all the time. Cleese really didn't have the heart to tell them we mostly just say mate.
Where I come from, if you see someone falling from the sky...
Yes, but this is a competition.
When does that ever happen in your stinky crop field? You just accidentally had a lie-in one morning and you look out your window to just see... So now it's a night over in Germany, where petrol is alcohol, and there's this hybrid character suddenly.
My name is Franz, and I am a huge fan.
In the air, I am in charge.
Imagine if this movie's actually about the toxicity of racing and how it's slowly distorting Dusty away from who he truly is. First they tinker with his engine, then they command him to heights he cannot comfortably stomach, and now they're just neutering him. What a message that would be.
What do you think?
And it's done. So just like that, Dusty is now steamrolling the competition. They really don't lean on it much somehow. It's a bunch of pretty quick cutaways as the guy edges his way ahead of each of the back-end planes, minus the ones that are randomly exploding in the sky. And with Dusty rising through the ranks to 8th place, he's getting all the media attention now.
So how can a crop duster outfly you?
Wait, what?
There he is! Dusty!
After all, Dusty is a proper underdog story going on now. And Ripslinger, of course, isn't happy that he's getting all the attention. Our antagonist is rising up. Oh, also with Skipper hearing of Dusty's success, only now is he motivated to actually support the guy in person. Not entirely sure why he didn't feel like coming at any sooner point, but whatever. But the old vet just isn't able to do it. Genuinely kind of tragic, shot down in the moonlight with just a sad note on the end that...
It's probably not a good night for flying, anyway.
And so it's the next day and another leg for Dusty.
What if a guy wanted to fly through the mountains instead of over them?
Bad idea.
Are you kidding me? Does Dusty want to die? He seems to be making every choice that'll guarantee that spreading his guts across some mountainside is his final moment. Every night this guy must dream for the cold embrace of death. He's told not to, just to fly higher. That old argument again. I mean, it's a pretty simple premise, and they're just repeating themselves every leg break at this point. It's just more of the same. Speaking of, El Chupacabra is continuing to hit on the Canadian plane that is clearly not interested.
Any space, huh?
You can only pretend for so long.
Yeesh. This is all your fault. But now there's an opportunity for the planes to actually do some talking. We have Ishani coming up to Dusty.
I wanted to compliment you on your success, Dusty.
Why does she talk like that? Why does this make me feel uncomfortable? And then they go on a date. Is this really the best idea in the middle of a race? I mean, I know it's break time, but surely this is at risk of doing some damage from more overworking. I doubt people go off on jogs in between marathons, do they? But it's romance time, and an excuse to see the Taj Mahal. Also, you can't seriously be telling me that these two are aerodynamically equal. Look at their two designs. And also, they're dirtying the waters again with strange Cars universe logic as they swoop through a swarm of seagulls that are all literally planes. But the actual planes aren't birds, right? But tractors are animals because... But anyway, the true purpose of this date comes out.
You like to fly low, don't you? Railroad tracks through a valley in the mountains, so you can still fly low?
Thanks, Ishani.
So what do you think Death Wish Dusty is gonna do over the Himalayas? Follow the advice of everyone around him, or confirmation bias into his own incredibly reckless and illogical ways? And then pretty much immediately we come to a hurdle, a tunnel, to which Dusty instantly pulls up, freaks out, and quits. It's all a very quick turnaround on this story beat that really feels like it's cutting corners, but it's character development time. I thought that'd be the time where Dusty breaks his fear, but instead it's recklessly driving into the train tunnel. Actually pretty decent for a set piece to play with, until you know what to expect appears at the other end. He died. Rest in peace to that poor train that was caught as collateral damage. Of course, in this comatose reality of whatever's going on in Dusty's brain, he reaches his destination and long before anyone else has even arrived.
No one else is here yet. You're in first place.
Dusty is on the up and up. But of course, now he needs to confront Ishani over what was clearly a trap.
You set me up.
Look, I didn't ever want to hurt you.
Why?
She's in cahoots with Ripslinger.
You could have got me killed out there today.
I really thought that you'd just turn around.
And that's all we get to learn. Turns out the back propeller is a Ripslinger exclusive, and we move on from there. Dusty now becoming an icon for the working class as all eyes are on him, and his friends will be joining him in Mexico. And then there's Chupacabra, still pining over this same poor lady, serenading in the most idiotic of ways.
No, 1,000 no's.
Until, for some whatever reason, Dusty is on his side and wants to assist, and so he sets up a different serenade that's still the same song, but slower this time. You can't make this up.
I'm just in love, my cheek next to you.
I prefer this version. Let's forget the whole mini musical and 180 the Canadian plane actually does in this movie.
What happened to you?
That song. It flipped the switch.
Come here.
Because this always makes me feel uncomfortable. And we're off! It's all ocean from here, and with Ripslinger being our clear antagonist, we have his little minions coming in clutch for him with...
Oh! My antenna!
An actual assassination attempt.
Oh no!
Okay, well that's more like your own fault there, Dusty. And so clearly, with no clear path assistance and a probable death, it's fair to say this race is lost. Dusty goes so far off course, he's intercepted by the US Navy, and after briefly being threatened, he's set to land on the USS Fleisenhauer. Only to discover that Skipper lied about his past missions as one of the wrenches in all of his war stories. How fitting that Dusty ended up in the exact place where he'd find a wrench's wall of fame, huh?
You gotta get out of there. You're gonna have to fly high.
Is it true?
It's true.
Oh, so I guess that's that then.
I only flew one mission.
Dusty's entire reality seems to be breaking around him from when he started. His mentor is a fraud, he's lost his sprayer, his insides are all swished about, and a love interest is somewhat evil. Oof. Should have stayed back with the fertilizer.
Just like Mama used to spray.
Now he's got a steamroll out of there, with the added boost from the aircraft carrier system. Huh, nice. Dusty now has to fly high if he wants to survive the storm at all.
Headwind's good. Pressure's good.
Thanks, Sonic! Oh, wait, what? I meant it just because this guy's a sound-alike, but actually, Roger Craig Smith is cast in this movie. He's Ripslinger, so this probably is Sonic filling in a smaller role, too. Huh.
Dusty was a nice guy.
We're all gonna miss him.
Oh yeah, I can hear it. And as El Chupacabra and Ishani shame Ripslinger's personality, Dusty fights the storm.
Mayday, mayday, mayday!
So like, he's dead, right? There are several segments of him fully submerged underwater. Even if he's pulled out, isn't he just gonna be a spluttering mess after this? Oh, here he is being pulled out. That's a cool shot for it. And his body is wrecked.
Broken wing ribs, twisted gear, bent prop. It's over.
Hold on, did she say wing ribs? Oh, okay, that's a real thing. I seriously thought they were just about to start inventing body parts to keep up with the anatomy thing. But yes, while the race is seemingly doomed for Dusty, and he'll have to live with several bodily injuries, surprising no one, he doesn't care, just because he was lied to.
One mission. So much for Volo Pro Veritas.
And why would Skipper lie about such a thing? It's time for a good old-fashioned flashback. Get out of there! Oh my god! Bloody hell! Holy shit!
Keep your distance.
They're showing it! They're actually showing brutal Air Force fiery death! Yeah, okay. I guess that makes sense for why Skipper didn't do any more missions anymore. His whole squadron of rookies were killed under him, and he's too traumatized to fly. Dusty is his first successful rookie, if you can call this a success. And so the very next day, while Dusty mopes in despair, El Chupacabra shows up with his own gift of wings, which would kind of be a nice wholesome friendship moment if his entire reasoning isn't because Dusty helped him get laid with a plane that typically wasn't interested.
You helped me with my pursuits of the heart. Now we are here to help you.
You know, it sure is easy for a plane if every limb you break could just be a replacement away from full functionality again, you know? The Canadian offers some pipes. John Cleese appears with a sat-nav. Can we have something for the limp, please? Oh, and even a bunch of unnamed racer planes contribute. Was not expecting that. Hopefully one of these is a bit more practical. And by the end, Dusty has become an entirely new plane. This single goal of his really stripping him of his entire existence. What would happen if you put all of his old parts together? Has the Cars universe ever touched on the ship of Theseus? And to finish it off, Ishani reappears to give out her super slicer back propeller as well.
This one didn't really suit me, but I think you will have a lot better luck with it.
Yeah, you're a sellout, aren't you, Dusty?
And now, here we are on the final day. Ripslinger never comments on his propeller being used. Instead, we just get...
You're afraid of getting beat by a crop duster.
Wow, you really showed him, Dusty. And we're off for the final time, Mexico to New York. And though Dusty's got whole new parts to bolster his speed, he's also still not doing anything tactical to gain any speed. It's still mostly in one direction, no G-radials or anything. But he's making his way up the list now, because reasons? If it's because he's upgraded now, then how come he was able to overcome them before? That was hypocritical. Plus, they expressly mentioned the air is thinner up top, so you move faster. So this is still just so illogical and against the laws of physics, everything Dusty is doing. He really must be dead from that train crash earlier.
Okay, we're out of camera range. You know what to do.
So the trio at the top go for another assassination attempt, only for one more surprise ex machina.
Skipper?
Dusty, pull up!
Whoa!
Skipper's in the air and in the murdering mood again. So at this point, the idea of being just a race just goes out of the window as the four play cat and mouse against this arena for a little while. Not entirely sure what the plan is since they're only really chasing the guy at this point. They don't have guns. But after some back and forth, we finally have Dusty shaking the minion twins, Ned and Zed, off with... Yeah! I guess if your enemy is breaking rules to assassinate you, it's all free game for a third party to attempt to intervene. But you'd think there'd be more precautions for this kind of thing in a global event like this, no? Anyway, it's Skipper versus Ripslinger.
Say hello to the Warsaw Windmill.
Look, you're crazy!
Oh, never mind. He lived to scuff Skipper in the tail. And Dusty heads off for the final leg. With Dusty trailing behind and struggling to keep up, he remembers the original advice.
Tailwinds like nothing you've ever flown.
Who'd have thought the piece of advice Dusty kept ignoring, fly higher, was the answer? Though at the same time, how does the 3 times world champion of this race not know this to do it himself?
Don't look down, don't look down, don't look down. Ugh.
Either way, he does it. And it's so fun, he has time to play around in it, apparently. And so, with that final revelation, it's time to finish up this race in New York again. Ripslinger now in the role of low to the ground, and Dusty...
Time to eat my dust!
What, do you think something would happen here? I'd never be so crude. Although the towers are missing in this movie. I don't even want to comprehend all the ramifications that could mean. And as Ripslinger prepares his final pose, finally, Dusty uses his G-radial and wins the race, of course.
He's done it! He's done it!
And everyone cheers. So there isn't a point system? It's just who can race that last bit? Mexico to New York the fastest who wins? It seems like the rest of this race is a waste of time, considering you get ample breaks in between. Anyway, everyone gives out their 2 cents, even the old hybrid fan.
All of us who want to do more than just what we were built for.
Ah, what a nice message. None of them will be able to fly, though. The crop duster is still a plane, after all. And as Ripslinger is sent away in sewage, it's a thing that happened, Dusty catches one last glimpse of... You know, this movie has that same strange split. It's clear the actors they cast are pretty good. I mean, it is Sonic and John Cleese, and the animation's pretty nice. Made on a $50 million budget, but the writing really lets this movie down. It clearly feels like a direct-to-video movie, because it was, and they decided to release it theatrically last minute. I can see this as just a burner piece of entertainment you watch on a small TV at home, you know? Because as much as it was trying not to be Cars, it sure is just another racing movie with many of the same tropes, and a few less graceful ones added on top. The humor as well was not good. I don't remember liking any of it apart from the stairs. And that's a plus for the animators anyway. But nevertheless, this spin-off turned $50 million into $239 million overnight. Wow. And it turns out they made a sequel 1 year later, so I guess our ride's not done here yet. And there was a third one set to be in space? I gotta look into this some more. So look, I've done a lot of terrible episodes over the years, and I've seen my fair share of terrible movies in all sorts of forms. But it's very rare to see a sequel to a terrible movie. But enter Planes 2, Planes, Fire and Rescue. As I understand it, It's the more popular one to the original. Some people even going on to say that this sequel is actually good. And I'd like to believe that. At the same time, looking at reviews from other people, you see the likes of 5.9s, 44s, and 2.2s. This movie seems to be a little bit of a 50-50. Is this yet again another terrible movie to add to the franchise's spin-off subtitle on Disney Toon Studios as opposed to mainline Disney Pixar? Or is this a terrible movie that has climbed out of the trenches themselves and actually made a damn good sequel? Well, let's go find out, as this is the sequel to the Terrible Planes movie. Dedicated to real firefighters everywhere? Wow, is there some genuine heart in this movie? Honestly, I'm stunned we're reaching the wholesome immediately. Though at the same time, the orchestral music underneath kind of feels like we're about to fall into some propaganda. We already did that with the Paw Patrol movie. And the US military do sponsor a lot of movies. So yes, our guy is back. Dusty Crophopper, if you forgot his name. I low-key forgot his name earlier. And he's doing his normal life now that he rebuilt himself to be a better person than he was in his past life. He's a plane that's allowed to fly because he was willing to harvest his organs and replace them with racing parts. What a message from the first movie. And so now there's an early cup race going on, which of course Dusty fully wins, as the host goes on to fully exposit his entire past.
A small-town crop duster who overcame impossible odds.
All the while, we get more action scene montages of racing around this course, as Dusty himself goes on to show that he is a good person by shouting out that his crew are the best that anybody could ask for.
You're a gas consultant.
That's correct. I've got gas.
Yeah, this is Disney Toon Studio. I don't actually remember there being that many fart jokes in the first Planes movie. There were some, but good to know even in the sequel, the comedy is crap. But anyway, as we go to see out more of the world, there's this old guy who's an old fire truck who has to use Rusty's. Dusty has his own water tower now, that's cool. And symbolically, he flies over the farm. That used to be his origins in the first movie. It's so lovely and symbolic. So glad he's not a schmuck who has to work hard labor like the working class. Not for him, he's middle class, he can afford new organs. But anyway, after some less humble origins, he goes out training with his old mentor man again, and then he stalls. And for the very first time, we see fully inside of a car plane in the car, planes, trains, bird planes universe. It turns out they don't have hearts behind their eyes. They do in fact have all of these little gears going on there, and something deep inside him has shredded. It's liver disease, the Planes movie, woohoo! But yes, after some more mild puns that are pretty simple to come up with, like
I kicked Aston Martin,
our little buddy here goes on to commit surgery to see what's wrong with the gears. And that in its own way is really interesting. Like, you know what I mean? I don't even need to start the sentence. There's surgery going right into the gear mechanics, and it gets more confusing as we get an answer.
Your reduction gearbox is failing.
Because it turns out here that their gearbox is like flaking off. There were metal flakes inside of their innards, right? So it's organ representation, sure, right? But then on top of that, they go to mention that his specific gearbox is out of production. It's not being made anymore. What? Where was it ever being made? Are there factories that produce cars? Why did they stop? Does this not kill everyone with that organ? Apparently it does. What is the factory system? Whatever the case, they can't build a new one. This is the plot line of Cars 3, in that our racing titular character is going to have to retire somehow. This movie, by the way, came out in 2014, so this is way ahead of its time for the threequel. I wonder if it too will have a well-achieved message over the whole thing, huh? Anyway, the point that Dusty needs to take away is that if he pushes himself into the red, he'll crash. And on that bombshell, we cut to... Okay, what the fuck? Immediately afterwards, yes, we've cut to a parody of Hooters. No, the song in that clip was not real, but there is suddenly this country vibe with a notable theme in the background if you pay enough attention. Nice one, sequel. Now we are to be exposed to pickup trucks saying pickup lines. It's lazy is what this kind of comedy is, but you know, it passes. Anyway, it's all about moping here. We'll start speeding things along until we get to the main plot line. The buddies here are discussing finding him a gearbox, asking out the whole world where they can find one. The old man from the origin of the first movie comes in, so that he'll offer him his old job. He naturally farts on the side because that is 50% of his character, to which Dusty then flies out moping into the night. dives himself into the red. What is he physically looking at in these shots? The dial is not on his nose. And then he goes on to crash. But it's a fire! And it's a challenge dealing with all the leaks in the water system since this place is so rural and old. And admittedly, it's a nice little sequence. You can see where the themes are going. You might remember the title of the movie. Another hurdle is the fact that the fire truck guy is so old that he's not the best. Until they eventually decide to take down the water tower. I like this. It was established earlier, it's symbolic as the destruction of Dusty's legacy and career, and it works. And as daybreak comes in and nobody slept over the night, I guess, the old man fire truck and his inability to keep up safety precautions around here caused the strip to be reported.
Is that guy writing down everything I say?
And on that note, the runway is shut down unless they find another fire rescue vehicle. The whole community is devastated as everyone needs this runway, and of course you can guess where this is going to go. So far for an introduction, I don't hate it, at least not that turning point. And actually, now that we've gotten over the more petty, unhumble beginnings of the first movie, we now start to get to some really good, interesting territory. We'll skip over the childish scene where they plan out how to upgrade the old man and nobody likes the idea. As the fire truck old man is now moping as Dusty comes to visit, blaming himself, of course, because he started the fire.
I'm old, Dusty. Looks like my firefighting days are over.
And it's voice lines like this that are surprisingly good. This is a real, striking at the heart kind of conversation. He's an old man fire truck who can't keep up with safety standards, and every achievement he's ever achieved on this wall are old and tattered at this point. It's a real good stark about legacy and success. The voice acting in this movie are surprisingly too good for what it deserves. Having a genuine, serious, wholesome, but sad conversation in the middle of your kids' movie, I guess I'm just all for them. And they're kind of rare in terrible movies, of the past 60 I've seen anyway. But anyway, as the plot continues, we come to see an old picture of him and a crop duster plane, just like Dusty, who is a seat, a single-engine air tanker. An aerial firefighter. You know where this is going. Dusty is now going to be the second fire rescue vehicle. He's going to drop away the career of racing. He's going to solve the runway strip, and he's going to become a water plane. Technically, it's more harvesting of organs to become someone else you're not, but yeah, it's more wholesome this way. And so off he flies away to get certified. With, admittedly, some pop culture music, but it's not horrid. I don't recognize the song, so that's a start. Skimming the details, he arrives, sees a bunch of titular characters that are gonna be the future team members, and then there's a fire out to go to. The land for where he can get the certificate is indeed at a fire watch canyon, where forest fires are very common. Everyone gushes about him for being the celebrity champion racer plane, and then they're off to action, with an actual pop culture moment this time.
Drop the needle!
Yes, this time they're out to play AC/DC's Thunderstruck. And honestly, this feels really strange. You got all of these beautiful droning, craning shots of planes and fire and water, and it really does feel kind of like glorified propaganda. But also, how else do you display this big feat of heroism and action? You know, this is a military movement in a sense. But what I really enjoy through this initial exposure of fire team rescue is the fact that we genuinely learn all sorts of processes of actual firefighting. Up to this point, the entire Cars franchise has just kind of been racing stories, or weird spy ones, where humans just happen to be actually the cars, not just the drivers. They're very flat, self-accommodating, independent stories of maybe the determination of the human spirit, but they're cars. But it's nothing really wholesome and goal-minded. It's sport. It's only sport. But this looks like the kind of movie that could genuinely inspire a kid to become part of a fire rescue team. And we're seeing all of the miniature mechanics of how that team works. We learn about where the water is stored, how they come to gather it, the movements that are needed to sometimes handle a fire, and what are the pros and cons for certain maneuvers. We learn that they're boxing it in, that there's another team that shreds the trees down below. This seriously plays out like a really strange montage advert. But I guess the little 6-year-old boy version of me inside my brain just wants to lap it all up. This is just really cool. Maybe I'm falling for propaganda, but at least this is saving lives, you know? Theoretically. Or maybe I should just praise it on the fact that thank God they didn't imply that the dropping of water was one big pissing thing. They could have done that in Planes universe. That would certainly change the entire vibes of the movie if everyone was just pissing on fire. I'm so glad the water is clear. Oh, also they hook a cow along the way. That seems a little extreme. Anyway, following that, we finally get to meet the man that's going to be able to certify Dusty. It's Blade here, who is very dry and even calls out Dusty for being in the airspace. I'm glad there's someone serious and legitimate here. But Dusty is taken on and they start to rearrange his organs. They cut off his feet and give him new ones. And they have wheels, apparently. We're genuinely learning pieces of engineering here. I wish the Cars franchise did that more. I want to know how a car functions. Even if it's a weird anatomy question, in this case, it's just fully they are the vehicles. Let's learn some mechanical engineering along the way. It's at this point as well we come to a nice thematic piece, which is another wall of portraits. There were all sorts of members of the fire team that are glorified and immortalized on this wall, but what do you have to do to get there? You crash. And then they give us one final piece of, technically I still have the propaganda thing in mind.
Takes a special kind of plane.
But also, I kind of see what they're saying. These are fighters for life and death. It's such a more noble career choice to make a story out of. And then the montage training begins. This very much just feels like it's sticking to the formula of the first movie, whereby there is a new mentor, they come with information. Here's how you catch the water. Don't fly low at night, that's where you crash. You gotta make sure you don't miss your accuracy. You've gotta push into the red at certain moments, which of course is gonna clash against Dusty's entire thing. All the while, also in the montage, we see that he's being stalked at night by this girl here who is going to be the romantic interest by the end of the movie. It's kinda dated. She's very parasocial. You can see the formula emerging with this exact same timing for a training montage, but it works. What else is he going to do next? But it does all go by very, very fast. And then to break it all up, we get a phone call from back at home. Let's hear what the buddies have to say. They got to get their voice actors some paycheck.
Listen to my new siren!
This was the guy I was complimenting the work of 5 minutes ago. They're tarnishing his legacy in the same breath. But following the next day, the park superintendent visits. And you know, he's the bad guy because, he's a car in this Planes movie. He is the big dog of this entire lodge and canyon, and wants to have a grand reopening party for his big wooden log out in this canyon, with VIPs coming along. All the while being stunned that Crop Hopper is actually here and wants to, of course, bring him in for that celebrity status.
I smell photo op, flash cha-ching.
But while I have all these compliments about the delivery of everything, and, you know, the plot's okay, it's standard, the jokes are really dragging this movie down. There is not a single good one in this movie. I'm just gonna spoil it now. Anyway, we hear about some admin, like 80% of the budget went to his lodge and not the rest of the fire prevention procedures. Blade complains about there being too many people and low humidity in the atmosphere, though this doesn't come back, but it's an interesting detail to pick up, I guess. And that he used to go by the name of Blazin' Blade. So let's go find out what that's all about, eh? It's time for some character plotline. Yes, this is the only new thing there could be. It's not that new.
Yeah, they're real.
Oh my god. Where we come to learn, in another sort of formulaic way, our old mentor here was in fact famous once on a TV show called Chops, which is a very nice parody of, obviously, Cops. He used to pretend to be a firefighting helicopter with a second guy here called Nick Lupin Lopez, played by Paul Rudd Irwin? Nice, okay. But nobody knows why he's here now. Ooh. Is it because his buddy's dead? Wow, what a surprise. We'll come back to that later, of course. As it's the next day, there's another fire, and this one is a big one. It's just common in grounds like this. You only hear about the big ones anyway, which is something I guess makes sense. Never thought of that before. I'm in Britain. We barely have sunshine, let alone trees to catch fire. This time, it's another great fire-stopping experience. A little less glorified this time. We don't exactly have Thunderstruck playing in the background. It's more so focused on Dusty as the new trainee member actually trying to do the task and pretty much failing most of the way. He aims too high with the water. He's nervous once his picture is taken for the wall. And even the little ones end up getting trapped by the fire briefly before Dusty does come in clutch and sprays them down so they can clear the way and move the on-fire tree. The fire is contained, it's boxed in, and the jumpers will handle the rest, which, as well, super interesting to learn. Just the fact that sometimes fires are only contained and they have to deal with it slowly for the rest of the night on a smaller scale. We do also learn as well that these planes really shouldn't be out 30 minutes after sunset because that's the most likely time to crash when you have low visibility. Makes so much sense. Doesn't mean that it's been without drama, as Dusty has been flubbing along the way and daring himself to push himself to do the right thing, thereby breaking formation instead of taking the safest route approach. So Blade only has complaints for him for going out of formation in a life or death situation. Oh, and I only noticed this the second time through. This...
Whoa! That was low.
This is foreshadowing. Technically, it only appears once. Really, I think this probably should have appeared twice to properly establish a beat coming later, but... oh well. But before we go on, I just wanted to say a quick thank you for watching this far in so far. You're at the halfway mark. If you are new to this channel, then do consider subscribing to see any future terrible movies we cover. Or check out the prequel to this movie if you want to lower your expectations. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this movie on the side, so do please let me know in the YouTube comments below or on our Discord server if you want to be more involved with our community. And I shall let you get back to the second half of the sequel to the Terrible Planes movie. Cheers! Anyway, we now get to see the Superintendent's giant lodge, and they do weddings here. We come to meet of another serious fire rescue ranger in the form of Pulaski? As Pulaski?
Engine Pulaski, sir.
Pulaski?
Pulaski.
Right, anyway.
Well, whatever his name is, it's Patrick Warburton. What a surprise. There's also another guy, Ranger Jammer, who knows about the wildlife populations. They're two good guys inside of this superintendent bubble. There's another pun gag about a guy called Boat Reynolds. And then our main characters come to have a chat with this old RV couple.
We wore off the treads on our honeymoon.
I'm not just stunned by the quality of these jokes, I'm stunned that it is exclusively fart jokes and sex jokes. There is no other joke in this movie. In fact, nobody else makes a joke. This is not a jokey movie. It's really serious. Unless it's an opportunity to talk about groin functionalities. Oh, okay, I guess there are other jokes sometimes, like the giant helicopter wind lifter here then goes on a monologue in the middle of this conversation.
He burned his tires. He thought they were his favorite snack.
I mean, it's a story beat, I guess. And then we cut back to the Dusty plotline at the radio with his old buddies again, where he has a final heartbreak, learning that while they did find his gearbox at one point, it was the wrong one. The crate was supposedly mislabeled.
Nobody has your gearbox.
It is the sad ending that retirement is mandatory, and he's never gonna function again. His liver is damaged or whatever. He cannot be a racer, and I love that. Of course I do. British endings, we love our dark endings, but to be able to find purpose in another career despite limitations is brilliant. And to take on a far more noble one has so much more emotive weight to it, especially to present into a kids movie. This is just a brilliant, tragic, heroic story. But now we have our final hurdle. As it turns out, overnight, one of the VIP jets blew embers in all directions accidentally by flying too low over the boxed-in fire. None of the VIPs or the superintendent care about the environment here. And now there are two new fires. It's the real thing beginning, and we have a whole giant lodge of civilians to handle as well.
Fire is about 4 hours from their front door. They're gonna have to evacuate.
All the while at this pivotal moment in the story when the real drama is actually amping up, Dusty is distracted for his own personal problems with his liver. We're gonna stick that it's his liver. He's not paying attention to instructions. He's not split loading the water, he's full loading the water. He drops it all at once rather than one leg at a time, separate to make it last longer. Adding on to that, he goes against orders and tries to restock more water in the lake rather than going back to base. He struggles to catch the water. He's stalling in the water. His liver's giving him issues. It's a proper disaster everywhere. A brilliant culmination of conflicts from personal to actual outside world scale. And it drags Blade back to his olden ways, having to use a little hoister to catch him in the river like he did in the TV shows. The hoist gets caught in all of the trees, the both of them are stuck. The only chance he has is to restart his engine and push it far into the red line to get out there in time. Or else he's gonna fall into the waterfall and it all goes downhill from here. How does it turn out? Alright, it's a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but we'll allow it. But against these literal life or death situations, which we practically haven't seen in the whole Cars universe, we come to the main points and themes of the stakes here. You can't outrun a fire. That's a great factoid I've never thought of before. Again, my 6-year-old brain is slowly growing. Great to teach on the side of a kid's movie.
This isn't about you. This is about life and death.
It's the reality shock that Dusty needs. He doesn't have what it takes, and he's not a noble person. He's a racer, all for himself and none for anybody else. To which he retorts,
"My gearbox is busted! Alright?"
It's the culmination of all of his failures as a person. He doesn't know his purpose right now, and he's just flubbing it, as anyone would with our individualist perspective. To which Blade responds with a brilliant thematic line that shows some genuine great writing intermixed in this noble story that I think can really resonate well in this emotive scene.
If you give up today, think of all the lives you won't save tomorrow.
It's one of the few times that a movie isn't just about achieving a goal or individual success. It's about other people. It's about sacrificing civilian. Sacrificing yourself for civilians. It's a career into safety, and it's not something you can flub like racing.
So what are you going to do?
And so they go into the mines. They're going to wait for it to burn over. It's the only chance they've got. And more so than that, Blade here, the veteran mentor of this safety team, is taking the brunt of the fire, protecting Dusty as his final civilian to protect. And there's some great cinematography, like the fire flakes coming over the dark screen. It's really good. Naturally, let's cut this up with the superintendent talking a little bit, shall we? He's trying to give a speech and ignoring any fire issues, of course.
And you're old and you have a dumb hat on.
But now that he's delayed enough and refused to evacuate all of his people until this very point, finally, all the civilians see the fire in the horizon. Now, everybody evacuates. Planes going up one at a time, which is really interesting. Obviously, this is also a fictional world. Everyone is a car and a plane, so they would have had to have worked out their own safety fire proceedings to leave, but it's one plane at a time, only 5 miles an hour. It's walk slow but consistent. It's interesting. Or maybe I'm just getting old, man. They even give out advice that I assume they would give out to pilots, or did they just invent it?
Remember to avoid the smoke and stay above the canyon walls.
On top of that, there's a train that takes out people in certain batches until it's full and they have to wait, and others have to take the main exit road. I've thankfully never been in a fire situation, but the organization as well is an interesting thing to see actually represented, even in this fictional world where they've got to work out their own routing plans to make things efficient and safe. Maybe it's just the goody two-shoes in me that's interested in safety organization. Anyway, back to Dusty and Blade. They finally get out of the mines. They are alive, but Blade... Blade is too damaged to fly now. He's returned back to base. The others are trying to repair him. He's resting. And now we finally get to learn of what happened to Nick Lupin Lopez. I mean, it's kind of what you expect, but well. As it turns out, Nick was doing a loop-de-loop for his stunt as he usually does on a routine day, but there was a freak crosswind. But the tragic part of the story is Blade was the first one on the scene, but he didn't know what to do. He wasn't a real lifesaver. And so instead of choosing to pretend to be a hero, he showed up here, he got trained and certified, and came here, saving them for real. It's a little standard and formulaic, but it is a real attempt at an emotive driving theme. It can resonate with children. Somehow it resonates with my reptilian brain. And even if it's been done again and again, it's a great formula to play with. It's wholesome and emotive. It's not original, but it's slightly burgeoning towards a territory of making you cry. Even if it doesn't succeed, this is miles beyond practically all the other Terribles we've covered this far. Maybe my perspective is just warped from how many terrible movies I've seen, but I love this. And more so than that, the superintendent now has gone to reallocate the water onto his lodge to get all the sprinklers going, taking away from the firefighters themselves. A little bit on the nose to make it seem like he's the bad guy, but yeah, sure. And adding on to all of that, the evacuation goes naff on the back end. The main road is blocked off. Pulaski's sprinkler is knocked off of his persons. A fire blocks the main road and the train exit. And it's after sunset. Visibility is low and we're at the highest risk of a crash. Windlifter is in charge now, and Dusty is allowed back up again. I mean, he's never been rejected airspace so far, but they keep almost running it into a story beat. And now there's more stakes. There's no water pressure. They can't receive new water. There is no lake. It's all dried up.
All we have left is what's in our tanks. Let's make it count.
And adding on to that, the whole canyon is on fire now. This is not photorealistic Pixar, but it's still pretty stunning visually. To have actually the world on fire and this disadvantaged team with limited water supply is just a great hurdle to overcome as a conflict. The music even cutting out as they fly through the fire is some nice, pretty simple cinematic techniques there. They come to throw out their sprays of water on the blockage, only 3 sprays and that's all they've got. The little ones come in to clear the road, and the main exit is actually saved. But it's not the end of our plotline, as those 2 old RVs that we spoke to earlier are at the climax of the issue. They mentioned before at the conversation we essentially skipped over, other than the honeymoon line, that they have a specific place in the canyon where their first kiss took place. And we've established where that is. On the far other side of the park, specifically at a training spot that Dusty was struggling with in the montage for not pushing into the red for it. Dusty goes on to say to Windlifter that he has the plan, he's the fastest, and he'll scoop out from the lake over there that's not dried up. And so he's allowed.
Go. And be safe.
And so here it is. He bumps along the river, collecting whatever he can. The bridge is breaking and the RVs are panicked. Dusty then also flies through all of this cliff debris like there's nothing there, which is a crazy shot to put in the middle of this movie and not really talk about. And then as everything's building up, we then have the surprise in the form of Blade rocking up as another Deus Ex Machina, but we'll allow it. It's his final moment, sure. He's able to fly and hoists them into position to keep them still on the bridge. And then Dusty goes on to scoop water from the waterfall as he flies upwards vertically. I think this is bloody brilliant. I don't know if that's actually a procedure that's possible. I don't know if it's a thing that's at all standard. Probably not. But of all the ideas you could come up with admittedly kind of limited, pick up water, spray it later, I am stunned to find something like this in this movie and actually really like it. A brilliant final execution, and it just, I don't know, it's cool, man. Let my 6-year-old me have fun. But then it also becomes that final last-minute decision for Dusty, pushing into the red line anyway. He knows that's how to successfully do this maneuver. He's always hesitated for the sake of his liver, as he will crash if he does it, but in coming away from an individualist running for a championship trophy for an individualist sport, now he's here to make the move to save real lives. And so, of course, he makes that leap. The music has cut out, he's seemingly stood up top, he's finally making the final play, and then he quick sprays the bridge. The RVs use the chance to race off of this crumbling wooden structure. Smoke begins to billow out of his nose in a way we've never really seen in the Cars franchise before. All the alarms are going off, and then he stalls. And that right there would have been an incredible, symbolic, tragic British story for the Terrible Planes sequel. But of course, it's always okay to get a happy ending on the side too. So let's see that. The canyon is all cleared. The fire has subsided. We montage through a cross dissolves as time passes and Dusty is repaired after being airlifted to base. Finally reawakening 5 days later, with the semi-romantic interest Dipper by his side the whole time.
I like watching you sleep.
Again, this is the most dated part of the movie. No, it's not going to be addressed by the movie. The superintendent was fired, with Jammer being put in charge for actually handling the organization correctly. And finally, Maru, the repair guy, has some news. They've replaced his props, replaced his damaged wing ribs, his pontoons are back on, and his gearbox
It's your fix!
Wait, really?
A custom-made epicyclic concentric reduction gearbox.
Yeah, okay, see, I have all of these praises for all of the deliveries and the plot direction, as formulaic as it has been. I'm even happy with a happy ending that he's not dead at the end. But this ending kinda disappoints me. While it has been established multiple times that Maru builds things himself, now it's better than new, the very fact that he fixed the main liver problem, I think I don't like. Because on the one hand, okay, it makes sense that he could be even better of a firefighter now. He doesn't have that disability of not being able to redline it. That's great. If that was the final ending choice of the movie, it's not. The expected caveat of this improvement is the fact that that original strip that was taken down because of basically OSHA violations is reopened for operations. That's lovely. The friends can give out their corn and all this good stuff. And Dusty is here to be the second firefighting aerial vehicle. Except he doesn't actually stick to that second shift. Well, he does, but he juggles it as a side hustle. He doesn't actually quit racing.
As long as the boss here will give me the day off.
Anytime.
He does them both part-time. And that is too far off of the happiness end for me. I love the idea that symbolically, he can't do his original racing, and so he finds a different career and a noble one along the way. Or even, he does get his gearbox back, but he chooses to stick to the noble career instead. Having him do both, in a way, takes away some of the nobility. After just learning about doing the sacrifice play to saving real lives, he chooses to go back to the individualist sport success as much as he can. And that is a real major dip on the plotline message of this movie. They go on to praise him, saying it takes a special kind of plane to do what you do, but for him to revert back to the start of the movie, I don't know, kinda grinds my gears in a way that rips off little metal shavings. Also now suddenly, the Peak Air Attack team are doing an aerial presentation, which I'll be honest, feels a little bit out of left field and out of character. They are very much serious characters. I can't see them doing something this unserious. Who's looking after the entire canyon right now? It's still summer. It's still fire season. But yeah, Dusty is part of it. He pushes into the red line. He doesn't die. He opens his wings. He flies directly up and he pisses on the audience. And at the very last second, after I was enthralled by so much of this wholesome semi-propaganda, something just kinda gets lost in the message right at the end. But also, I have a real 50-50 with this movie, I think. This is not even nearly a terrible, terrible movie. I've seen a lot of trash, and looking at the reviews, they're not happy. It's mostly pretty rotten. 44, 56, 5.9, 2.2. God, Letterboxd scares me. But I think I get it. The plotline wasn't crazy, it was pretty formulaic and simple. And there was a lot of expository explaining, but I loved that because it was such a cool concept in that it wasn't just telling us story beats, it was reflective of real maneuvers and operations. Perhaps this is some of the best concept for the Cars universe, full franchise included. It doesn't make one cry, but it almost kind of begins to lean that way with some stellar voice acting and great writing in some scenes. But of course, it's also awfully predictable, and the messaging at the end missed the perfect mark. There's also very little humor in this movie, unless it's fart and sex jokes, which really drag this movie down. But having a movie that's otherwise really serious, I actually kind of like in a way. Maybe it's just that I'm so used to absolute garbage that I do like this movie, but I think this is absolutely fine for a movie. It excites me and my inner child. Even if it's pretty to the numbers and low-key all just marketing, it almost works. I kind of want to work in the Firewatch industry after this. And in a sense, if it leads to a career of someone choosing to save other people's lives, is that really such a bad thing? I guess on my end, something to consider for retirement, if I ever choose to retire into rural America. We finish off with another kind of propaganda-feeling montage for the credits with just, glorified music and shots. Executive producer John Lasseter... Okay, get that off my screen. And there is a post-credit scene of Cad the superintendent now working at the Death Valley National Park. Ha! He has to be hot. Alright then. There's a reason I titled this video as not the Terrible Planes sequel, but the sequel to the Terrible Planes movie. It's because maybe at the end of the day, this is the perfect case scenario of a terrible movie clawing its way up and finally finding its place in the sequel. A real stunner amongst the gutters of the Cars spin-off franchise. It's not exactly a diamond, but damn does it somehow have a lot of heart in the middle. And that's all she wrote. From being a typical knockoff terrible spit out to a genuinely endearing idea with its own identity, I think Planes could be one of Disney's most interesting side expansions. But nonetheless, there is no more to showcase here, so for now, I'd best end it off there. My name's been Daz, thank you very much for reaching the end of this video, and I shall see you in a little bit.